Icons for today, do's and don'ts.
Mr. Prakash Belawadi is a renowned theatre and artist, filmmaker, and media professional from Bengaluru, known for his global contributions to arts and culture. He is also a founding mentor of the Bengaluru International Short Film Festival. Dr. Vikram Sampath is a celebrated historian and fellow of the Royal Historical Society, recognized for his biographies of Gwahar Jan and Vinayak Damodar Savarkar. He is the founder of the Bengaluru Literature Festival. Let us warmly welcome the speakers for today's session.
It's my pleasure to introduce our moderator for today's session, Icons for Today, Do's and Don'ts. Harsha Shankar Bhat is a talented linguist, a creative strategist with a flair for impactful ideas and an accomplished author. With her expertise and unique perspective, she is perfectly equipped to guide today's conversation. Please join me in welcoming Harsha Shankar Bhat. Teaching the book Tipu Sultan, the Saga of Mysore's Interregnum, 1760 to 1799. We request the dignitaries on the stage to launch the book.
Yelrigu Namaskara. It gives me great pride, of course with a little bit of hurt, to sit here in Mangalore and talk about Tipu. But the context and given that we are almost through the works of Dr. Vikram Sampath, stripping him of a lot of glorifications, it's also kind of a consolation that we have this session. On that note, I would like to welcome you all to this discussion on this mammoth effort that is this book. I would like to, both of the personalities here don't need an introduction for the voluminous body of work that they have created. But let me do a little bit. Dr. Vikram Sampath is the author of 10 acclaimed books on Indian history, including Splendors of Royal Mysore, The Untold Story of the Wadiyars, Voice of the Veena, S. Balachandar, Women of the Records and Indian Classical Music and the Gramophone. His 2-volume biography, Savarkar, Echoes from a Forgotten Past, and Savarkar, A Contested Legacy, and his latest books, Brave Hearts of Bharat, Vignettes from Indian History, and Waiting for Shiva, Unearthing the Truth of Kashi's Gyanvapi, have all gone on to become national bestsellers. His latest book, Tipu Sultan, the Saga of Mysore's Interregnum, has been creating waves even before its launch. In 2021, Vikram was elected a Fellow of the prestigious Royal Historical Society. He was awarded the Sahitya Academy's first Yuva Puraskar in English Literature and the ARSC International Award for Excellence in Historical Research in New York for his book, My Name is Gwahar Jan, The Life and Times of a Musician. The book has even been adapted for a play, Gwahar, by Lilette Dubé. He was among 4 writers and artists selected as writers in residence at the Rashtrapati Bhavan in 2015. Vikram has a doctorate in history and music from the University of Queensland, Australia, and was a senior research fellow at the Nehru Memorial Museum and Library, New Delhi. He was also a fellow of the Aspen Global Leadership Network, Eisenhower Global Fellow, and a visiting fellow at the, Vision Chefs College, Berlin. Currently, he is an adjunct senior fellow at Monash University, Australia. He is the founder of the Archive of Indian Music and the Foundation for Indian Historical and Cultural Research that fosters new scholarship in Indian history and curates Earth, a culture fest. Can we have a round of applause for Dr. Vikram Sampath? Prakash sir, Prakash Belawadi is a multifaceted personality who's made a lasting impact on Indian theatre, cinema, and television. For all of us who attended LitFest over the editions, we know he's been there constantly as a strong voice and a support to the conduct of these activities. With a career spanning decades, he has effortlessly transitioned between acting, directing, and writing. His passion for storytelling has led him to explore various genres, and most importantly, he has been a strong voice of the former left, now right, as he called himself yesterday. A true artist at heart, Sir continues to inspire audiences with his creative pursuits. Thank you. Can we also welcome Prakash sir to the I would like to keep this session more of an interaction because there's so much. Since I was asked to do this, I have literally been eating, drinking, sleeping with Tipu, and I told Vikram sir that ಟಿಪ್ಪುವಿನ ನಿಜ ಕನಸುಗಳು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರಿ, ನನ್ನ ಕನಸಲ್ಲಿ ಟಿಪ್ಪು ಬರುವಷ್ಟಂತೂ ಬರ್ದಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೀರಲ್ಲ, ಎಂತ ಮಾಡಲಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ. Nightmare. It is a nightmare because can we start with how many of us know Sultan Batteri? How many of us know what was it built of? No, it is a watchtower. What was it built of? This is where the entire discussion starts. We've all gone there. Of course, most of us have only seen S loves P and Ramu loves Sita or whatever. And the ASI plaque there is equally intellectually damaging because it says Sultan Batteri Bolur Mangalore. Mangalore was an important town even during the early historic times, referred to by Greek geographers. It was a capital of the Alupa rulers for a long time. Mangalore was taken over by the Portuguese, who were subsequently expelled by the Nayaks of Bidanur. In the early 18th century, Hyder Ali captured this place in 1763. I have no clue where Tipu Sultan figured in all of this. In 1768, it went into the hand of the British. Sultan Batteri, a watchtower, is said to have been built by Tipu Sultan to contain the entrance of warships into the Gurpur River. Though it is a simple watchtower, it looks like a miniature fortress with its many musket holes for mounting cannons all around. The most important piece of information that it was built, like this book revealed to me, using stones from churches that were broken down of Mangalore. How can this piece of history be left? Because history, again, like Sir was saying, when we say history, we say itihasa, does it happen? But unfortunately for our country's legacy, most of the time what was written as history was, does it never happen? Or does it happen the way someone else wanted you to believe it happened? And to counter that, if a work like that comes, which is exposing what facade was being built, it usually came at a huge price to pay. And I think your book also started on the price that you had to pay for wanting to tell the tale. So if we can kickstart the session from there.
ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. ಇಷ್ಟು ಹೆಚ್ಚಿನ ಸಂಖ್ಯೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಅದು ಭಾನುವಾರದ ಬೆಳಗ್ಗೆ ನೀವೆಲ್ಲ ಬಂದಿದ್ದೀರಾ. ದಟ್ಸ್ ರಿಯಲಿ ಇಟ್ ವಾರ್ಮ್ಸ್ ಮೈ ಹಾರ್ಟ್ and always such a pleasure adikoskara to come and speak in Mangalore. This is my 4th participation in the literature festival and I see it has only grown bigger and better with each edition. In fact, I should owe my entry into writing to Tipu Sultan very perversely. ನಾನು ಐ ಥಿಂಕ್ 12 ವರ್ಷದ ಹುಡುಗ ಆಗಿದ್ದೆ. ಆವಾಗ ನಿಮಗೆಲ್ಲ ಜ್ಞಾಪಕ ಇದ್ದಂಗೆ ಟಿ ವಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ಸೀರಿಯಲ್ ಬರ್ತಾಯಿತ್ತು, ಸ್ವೋರ್ಡ್ ಆಫ್ ಟಿಪ್ಪು ಸುಲ್ತಾನ್ ಬೈ ಸಂಜಯ್ ಖಾನ್. ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಮುಖ್ಯ ಪಾತ್ರನೂ ಅವರೇ ವಹಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದರು. ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ನಿಮಗೆ ಜ್ಞಾಪಕ ಇದ್ದರೆ ಟಿಪ್ಪು ಮತ್ತು ಹೈದರ್ನ ಟು ಜಸ್ಟ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಲ್ಟ್ ದೆಮ್ ಆ್ಯಸ್ ಹೀರೋಸ್, ಮೈಸೂರು ರಾಯಲ್ ಫ್ಯಾಮಿಲಿ, ಒಡೆಯರ್ ಫ್ಯಾಮಿಲಿನ ತುಂಬ ಕೀಳಾಗಿ ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ತೋರಿಸಿದ್ರು. ಮಹಾರಾಜರನ್ನ ಇಮ್ಮಡಿ ಕೃಷ್ಣರಾಜ ಒಡೆಯರ್ ವಾಸ್ ಶೋನ್ ಲೈಕ್ ದಿಸ್ ಫ್ಯಾಟ್, ರಿಟಾರ್ಡ್ ಹೂ ವಾಸ್ ಡಾನ್ಸಿಂಗ್ ವಿತ್ ದಿ ಕೋರ್ಟ್ ಡಾನ್ಸರ್, ನರ್ತಕಿ ಹಮ್ ಆಪ್ಕೋ ನಾಚ್ನಾ ಸಿಖಾಯಂಗೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ. ಮತ್ತು ಮಹಾರಾಣಿ ಲಕ್ಷ್ಮೀ ಅಮ್ಮಣ್ಣಿ, ದ ಸಗೇಷಿಯಸ್ ರಾಣಿ, ಶಿ ವಾಸ್ ಶೋನ್ ಲೈಕ್ ಅ ವ್ಯಾಂಪ್ ಫ್ರಮ್ ಒನ್ ಆಫ್ ದೋಸ್ ಏಕ್ತಾ ಕಪೂರ್ ಸೀರಿಯಲ್ಸ್, ಯಾವಾಗಲೂ ಕನ್ಸ್ಪೈರ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರೋದು ಟಿಪ್ಪು ವಿರುದ್ಧ. ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಅದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ತುಂಬ ಪ್ರತಿಭಟನೆ ಆಯಿತು ಆಲ್ ಓವರ್ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ. ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಈಗಲೂ ಎಸ್ಪೆಷಲಿ ಸೌತ್ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ ದಟ್ ವಾಸ್ ಅ ಪಾರ್ಟ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಅರ್ಸ್ಟ್ ವೈಲ್ ಮೈಸೂರು ಸಂಸ್ಥಾನ, ಅಲ್ಲೂ ಒಡೆಯರ್ ವಂಶ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ತುಂಬ ಆದರ ಇದೆ ಎಲ್ಲರ ಮನಸ್ಸಿನಲ್ಲಿ. ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ದ ಫೌಂಡೇಶನ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಮಾಡರ್ನ್ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ ವರ್ ಲೇಡ್ ಬೈ ದ ಲೇಟರ್ ಮಹಾರಾಜಾಸ್, ದೇರ್ ಇಲಸ್ಟ್ರಿಯಸ್ ದಿವಾನ್ಸ್. ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಅದೇ ಸಮಯದಲ್ಲಿ ನಿಮಗೆ ಜ್ಞಾಪಕ ಇದ್ದರೆ ಪ್ರೀಮಿಯರ್ ಸ್ಟುಡಿಯೋ ನಲ್ಲೂ ಬೆಂಕಿ ಬಿತ್ತು. ಸಂಜಯ್ ಖಾನ್ ಮಖಾನು ಹಿ ಗಾಟ್ burnt and lot of Kannada media was saying this is Wadiyara ಶ್ರಾಪದಿಂದ ಈ ಥರ ಆಯಿತು ಅಂತೆಲ್ಲ. There were lots of articles that came. As a media professional you would know how the media likes to present everything. ಸೊ ಆಗ ನಾನು 12-13 ವರ್ಷದ ಹುಡುಗ ಆಗಿದ್ದೆ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ನನಗೆ ಸ್ಕೂಲ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ನಿಜ ಹೇಳಬೇಕಂದ್ರೆ ದ ಸಬ್ಜೆಕ್ಟ್ ಐ ಹೇಟೆಡ್ ದ ಮೋಸ್ಟ್ ವಾಸ್ ಹಿಸ್ಟ್ರಿ. ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಎವ್ರಿ ಹಿಸ್ಟ್ರಿ ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಲಾಸ್ಟ್ ಬೆಂಚ್ನಲ್ಲೇ ನೀಲ್ ಡೌನ್ ಔಟ್ ಒಬ್ಬರು ನನ್ನ ಥರನೇ ಐ ಥಿಂಕ್ ಹಿ ವಾಸ್ ಆಲ್ಸೋ ನೀಲಿಂಗ್ ಡೌನ್ ಔಟ್ಸೈಡ್ ಕ್ಲಾಸ್, ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಯಾವ ಇಸ್ವಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾವ ಯುದ್ಧ ನಡೀತು, ಯಾರಾದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಯಾರು ಬಂದರು ಅದೆಲ್ಲ ನಾಪಕನೇ ಇರ್ತಾ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ, ಅದರ ಉಪಯೋಗನೂ ಏನು ಅಂತ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗ್ತಾ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ಆ ಥರ ಫಾರ್ ಅ ಪರ್ಸನ್ ಲೈಕ್ ದ್ಯಾಟ್ I don't know what these protests, ಈ ಶ್ರಾಪದ ಕಥೆ ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ಏನು ಮಾಡ್ತೋ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. ಅದೆಲ್ಲ ಐ ಥಿಂಕ್ ಇಟ್ಸ್ ಅ ಡೆಸ್ಟಿನಿ ದಟ್ ಟರ್ನ್ಸ್ ಯುವರ್ ಲೈಫ್ ಇನ್ ಅ ಡಿಫ್ರೆಂಟ್ ಮ್ಯಾನರ್. I decided on a completely self-motivated journey to find out the truth only about that one king and queen who were misrepresented in the serial. Nam family go Mysore go ಏನು connection ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ. I'm half a Maharashtrian, half a Tamilian, so there was no connect with Mysore. But over the next 10 years, it meant going to Mysore in every vacation, meeting members of the royal family, old timers, ಅಲ್ಲಿನ historians. ಯಾವತ್ತೂ not with the intention that ಇದನ್ನೊಂದಿನ ಪುಸ್ತಕ ಆಗಬೇಕು ಅಥವಾ ನಾನು ಇತಿಹಾಸಕಾರ ಆಗಬೇಕು ಆ ಥರ ಒಂದು ಭಾವನೆ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡು ಮಾಡಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಇಟ್ ವಾಸ್ ಸ್ವಾಂತ ಸುಖಾಯ ಅಂತ ಏನು ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ, ಫಾರ್ ಯುವರ್ ಓನ್ ಸೆಲ್ಫ್ ಡಿಸ್ಕವರಿ. ಇಟ್ ವಾಸ್ ಅ ಸೆಲ್ಫ್ ಮೋಟಿವೇಟೆಡ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಮೋರ್ ಇಂಪಾರ್ಟೆಂಟ್ಲಿ ಸೆಲ್ಫ್ ಫಂಡೆಡ್ ಪ್ರಾಜೆಕ್ಟ್ ಫಾರ್ ಅ ಲೋವರ್ ಮಿಡಲ್ ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ಫ್ಯಾಮಿಲಿ ಟು ಆ್ಯಕ್ಚುಲಿ ಅಫೋರ್ಡ್, ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ಸ್ ಟು ಮೈ ಪೇರೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಹೂ ಬೋರ್ ದಿಸ್ ಅಲಾಂಗ್ ವಿತ್ ಮೀ. ಆ ಪುಸ್ತಕ ಬಂತು. ಆಫ್ಟರ್ 10 years ಐ ರಿಯಲೈಸ್ಡ್ ದಟ್ ದೇರ್ ವಾಸ್ ನಾಟ್ ಅ ಸಿಂಗಲ್ ಬುಕ್ ಇನ್ ದ ಮಾಡರ್ನ್ ಟೈಮ್ಸ್ ಆನ್ ದ ಹಿಸ್ಟ್ರಿ ಆಫ್ ದ ಒಡೆಯರ್ಸ್. ನಮ್ಮ ಭಾರತದ ಇತಿಹಾಸ ಎಷ್ಟು ದೆಹಲಿ ಕೇಂದ್ರಿತವಾಗಿರುತ್ತೆ. ದೆಹಲಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಇದ್ದಿದ್ದು ಒಂದೊಂದು ಚಿಕ್ಕ ಪುಟ್ಟ ವಂಶ, ತುಗ್ಲಕ್, ಲೋಧಿ, ಖಿಲ್ಜಿ, ಇವ್ರದ್ದು ಕಾಂಟ್ರಿಬ್ಯೂಷನ್ಸ್ ಏನು ಅಂತ ಯಾರಿಗೂ ಗೊತ್ತಿರೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಬಟ್ ಅವ್ರ ಕಂಠಸ್ಥವಾಗಿ ಅವ್ರದ್ದೆಲ್ಲ ಲೈನ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಸಕ್ಸೆಷನ್ ನಮಗೆ ವಿ ವಿಲ್ ನೋ ಅಬೌಟ್ ಇಟ್. ಬಟ್ ಲಾರ್ಜ್ ಪಾರ್ಟ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಸೌತ್ ಇಂಡಿಯಾ ಆಗಲಿ, ಪೂರ್ವೋತ್ತರ ಭಾರತ, ಅದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ನಮಗೆ ಭಾರತದ ಇತಿಹಾಸದಲ್ಲಿ ಏನೂ ಒಂದು ಉಲ್ಲೇಖನ ಇರೋದಿಲ್ಲ. So during that time, this Toni Morrison, the American novelist, she said that if there is a book that you want to read and it hasn't been written yet, then you must be the first one to write it. So be the change that you want to see. Hage almost by chance, my first book, Splendors of Royal Mysore, The Untold Story of the Wadeyars, came out in 2008. ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಆ ಪುಸ್ತಕ ಬಿಡುಗಡೆ ಆದಮೇಲೆ ಸಾಕಷ್ಟು ಜಾಗದಲ್ಲಿ ಐ ವಾಸ್ ಗಿವಿಂಗ್ ಲೆಕ್ಚರ್ಸ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಸೊ ಆನ್. ಸೊ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ಜಾಗದಲ್ಲಿ ಪರ್ಟಿಕ್ಯುಲರ್ಲಿ ಆನ್ ದಿ ಇಂಟರೆಗ್ನಮ್ ಪೀರಿಯಡ್, ನಾವು 600 years ಆಫ್ ದಿ ಒಡೆಯರ್ ರೂಲ್ನಲ್ಲಿ 40 ವರ್ಷದ ಅಂತರಾಲ, ದ ಸಬ್ ಟೈಟಲ್ not to take from the person who's given a endorsement on the top, Shashi Tharoor, to use a word which no one can understand or pronounce, but interregnum is intermission or antarala. So where a regular kingdom is displaced and there is a usurpation that happens. So aa jagadalli BIC nalli they had called me for this talk on the interregnum period. I was 26 or 27. I didn't know that the world of history is full of so many landmines and sharks at that time, as I've been discovering ever since, along with my dear friend here. I was reading out letters written by Tipu Sultan himself, not even my own interpretation. Zainul Abidin Shustri hoge, he writes that Coorg nalli not only the living prisoners, even the dead Kurgis should be converted to Islam. Even dead bodies being circumcised and converted to Islam. Go to Calicut and destroy so many. I have converted 4 lakh kafirs in Calicut anta jambavagi avaru adralli barita idare avರ ಪತ್ರದಲ್ಲಿ. His own, straight from the horse's mouth, I was reading his letters, and the audience, which was by and large civilized, one group of them started shouting slogans. Paper rockets were thrown, maybe to test the rocket technology of Tipu also, at the podium. And the organizers, Papa Takshana Bhaya, the program was cancelled.
Thank God they didn't get you tigers.
I was taken back to the green room, and my father was sitting in the first row, and somebody came to him and gave a letter saying, ನಿಮಗೆ ಒಬ್ಬನೇ ಮಗ, ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ದಿನ ಬದುಕಬೇಕು ಅಂದರೆ ask him to mind what he talks and writes about. So obviously that led to a lot of unrest at home. And ನನ್ನ ದುರಾದೃಷ್ಟ ಒಂದು 2 ವಾರ ಆದಮೇಲೆ I had written a piece in Deccan Herald on the Divans of Mysore, a series ಆಗಿರ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತು ಅದು, but first one was on Purnaya. And so Purnaya is a very fascinating character, many shades to him. Adarnalli there were some references to Tipu also. And ಅದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ತಿರ್ಗಾ ಒಂದು ದೊಡ್ಡ ಪ್ರತಿಭಟನೆ ಔಟ್ಸೈಡ್ ಡೆಕ್ಕನ್ ಹೆರಾಲ್ಡ್ ಆಫೀಸ್. Some people had gathered there saying, this is all wrong, so we want an apology from him. The editor called me and said, they're doing this. I said, no, over my dead body. I'm not going to give any apology. Whatever I have written is based on facts. And the editor was willing to give them twice the amount of space to rebut whatever I had written. But obviously, they were not of that orientation. So my effigy was burnt in the middle of MG Road. That editor also sent me that photograph of the effigy burning. Those days, there was only one social media thing called Orkut, if you remember. So for a long time, that was my Orkut profile picture of my effigy being burnt. Drishti hotoitu anta naan ankonde. But, my mother, who kept very poor health those days, she was very, very perturbed. She said, she made me promise to her that in future, you're never going to write and talk about Tipu Sultan. I kept my word to her. In 2018, we unfortunately lost her. Then I thought that if I've given a promise to somebody and that person is not alive, then the promise is also not valid. And so I broke the promise to my mother. And 15 ವರ್ಷದ ಏನೇನು suppressed emotions ಇತ್ತು, I think all of that came bursting forth. And that is why this is a 900 plus page book, with the hope that from whichever heaven she is in, she'll protect me against whatever might happen.
So if you can take it from the truth to the fiction. ಭೈರಪ್ಪ ಅವರೊಂದು ವಿಡಿಯೋದಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತಾಡುವಾಗ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ, ಕಾರ್ನಾಡ್ ಮತ್ತು ಅವರ ಜಟಾಪಟಿ ಏನಿತ್ತು ದಸ್ ಆರ್ಟಿಕಲ್ ಸೀರೀಸ್, ಹಿ ಸೇಸ್ ಲೆಟ್ ದ ಟ್ರೂತ್ ಕಮ್ ಫಸ್ಟ್, ಮತ್ತೆ ಸೌಂದರ್ಯಕರಣ ಆಗಬೇಕು. ಬಟ್ ವೆನ್ ಇಟ್ ಹ್ಯಾಸ್ ಕಮ್ ಟು ಸ್ಟೋರೀಸ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ ಟ್ರೂತ್, ಅಬೌಟ್ ಟಿಪ್ಪು, ಫ್ರಾಮ್ ಟ್ರೂತ್ ಇಟ್ ಹ್ಯಾಸ್ ಸೀದಾ ಬೀನ್ ಡಿಸ್ಟಾರ್ಷನ್. ಸೌಂದರ್ಯಕರಣ ಆಗಿಲ್ಲ, ಇಟ್ಸ್ ವಿರೂಪಗೊಳಿಸಿ ವೆರಿ ಕನ್ವೀನಿಯಂಟ್ಲಿ ಪ್ಯಾಕೇಜ್ಡ್ branding of Tipu has happened for decades, and lapped up by institutions, and there has been no counter. Have we failed in creating, like I was talking to Vikram sir also and saying, even after 15 years of a so-called change in dispensation, has there been enough effort to take to the larger 140 crore people in a language they understand the real tale of Tipu or the real brand of Tipu?
The short answer is no. But there is a point. ಇವರು ಹೇಳಿದ್ರಲ್ಲ, ಇವರು ಡೆಕ್ಕನ್ ಹೆರಾಲ್ಡ್ ಇನ್ಸಿಡೆಂಟ್ ಆದಾಗ ಅವ್ರ ತಾಯಿಗೆ ಗಾಬರಿ ಆಗೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಕಾರಣ ಇತ್ತು. ಯಾಕೆಂದರೆ ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ಸ್ಟೋರಿ ಬಂದಿತ್ತು. ಆ್ಯಕ್ಚುಲಿ ಅದು ಸಣ್ಣ ಕತೆ, ಮಲಯಾಳಮಿಂದ ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸ್ಲೇಟ್ ಆಗಿ ಬಂದಿದ್ದು. ನಾನು ಇಂಡಿಯನ್ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪ್ರೆಸ್ಸಲ್ಲಿ ಕ್ರೈಮ್ ರಿಪೋರ್ಟರ್ ಆಗಿದ್ದಾಗ ಆಗ ಆ ಸ್ಟೋರಿನ ಯಾರೂ ಓದಿರಲಿಲ್ಲ, ಗಲಾಟೆ ಮಾಡೋಕ್ಕೆ ಬಂದವರು. ಅದು 6,000 ಜನ ಎಷ್ಟು ಭಯ ಹುಟ್ಟಿಸೋ ಥರ ಡೆಕ್ಕನ್ ಹೆರಾಲ್ಡ್ ಮುಂದೆನೇ MG ರೋಡಲ್ಲಿ ನಮಾಜ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು. ನಾವಲ್ಲಿ ಇದ್ವಿ ಆವಾಗ. ಅದಾದಾಗ ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಭಯ ಆಯಿತು. ಅದು ಸಮಸ್ಯೆ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂದರೆ, ಆಗ ಡೆಕ್ಕನ್ ಹೆರಾಲ್ಡ್ ಅವ್ರು ಹೆದರ್ಬಿಟ್ರು. ಎಲ್ಲ ಪೇಪರ್ ಅವರು ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಸಪೋರ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು. ಮತ್ತು ಆವಾಗ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಗೌರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಗೂ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಗಾಬರಿ ಇತ್ತು. ಬಟ್ ಫೈರಿಂಗ್ ಆಗಿ 4 ಜನ ಸತ್ತೋದ್ರು ಆ ಇನ್ಸಿಡೆಂಟ್ ಆದಾಗ. ಅದೆಲ್ಲ ಅವ್ರ ತಾಯಿಗೆ ಕಾಡಿರ್ಬೋದು, ಅದರಿಂದ ಅವ್ರು ಹಂಗೆ ಅಂದಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಬಟ್ ದ ಪಾಯಿಂಟ್ ಹಿ ಮೇಡ್, ಹಿ ಸೆಡ್ ದ ಎಡಿಟರ್ ಇನ್ ದಿಸ್ ಒಕೇಶನ್ ಆನ್ ದಿಸ್ ಒಕೇಶನ್ ಆಫರ್ಡ್ double the space for a clarification, and they were not prepared to do it. ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಆ ಥರದ ಮನಸ್ಥಿತಿ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ ಅನ್ನೋ ಥರದ್ದು ಹೇಳ್ತಿದ್ದಾರಲ್ಲ. Actually the problem is what you raised. The problem is the truth. And actually without meaning any offense, ನಾನು ಸಣ್ಣವನು, ನನ್ನ ಅಭಿಪ್ರಾಯ ಹೇಳ್ತೀನಿ. What is termed very lazily right and left in India, very lazy classification, right wing and left wing ಅಲ್ಲದ. ಈಗ ಅವರು ಈ ಹಿಂದುತ್ವ ಹಿಸ್ಟಾರಿಯನ್ಸ್ ಅಂತ ಯಾರು ಕರ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾರೋ ಅವರು ದೇರ್ ವೆರಿ ಡಿಫೆನ್ಸಿವ್ ದೆಮ್ಸೆಲ್ಸ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ ಇಟ್. ನಾ ಹೇಳ್ತೀನಿ, ದೇ ಡು ನಾಟ್, ಇನ್ ಮೈ ಒಪಿನಿಯನ್, ದೇ ಡು ನಾಟ್ ಅಂಡರ್ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡ್ ದಟ್ ದ ಟ್ರೂತ್ ಈಸ್ ಆನ್ ದೇರ್ ಸೈಡ್. ಯು ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಅಲೌ ಎನಿವನ್ ಟು ಸೇ ಎನಿಥಿಂಗ್. So long as you report the truth, they can be defeated. You don't need to take a defensive position at all. Mistakes happen with any regime. ಎಲ್ಲ ರಾಜರು ಏನು ರೌಡೀಸಾಗಿ ಬಂದಿರ್ತಾರೆ ಮೋಸ್ಟ್ಲಿ ಎಲ್ಲ, ರಾಜರು ಹೆಂಗಾಗ್ತಾರೆ. So there is no problem with that. But the thing is, in the case of Tipu Sultan, I'll make a personal confession. ನಾನು ನಾನು ಕಾಲೇಜಲ್ಲಿದ್ದಾಗ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ ರೋಡಮ್ ನರಸಿಂಹ ಅವರು ಒಂದು ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ಪ್ರಾಜೆಕ್ಟ್ ಥರ ಒಂದು ಪಬ್ಲಿಷ್ ಮಾಡಿದರು. ನಾನು ಇದಾದ ಮೇಲೂ ಜರ್ನಲಿಸ್ಟ್ ಆದಮೇಲೆ ಹೋಗಿ ಇಂಟರ್ವ್ಯೂ ಮಾಡಿ ನಾನು ಟಿಪ್ಪುವಿನ ಟಾರ್ಪಿಡೋಸ್ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ನಾನು ಒಂದು ಬರೆದಿದ್ದೆ. ಅದಕ್ಕೊಂದು ದೊಡ್ಡ ಹಿಸ್ಟ್ರಿನ ಆಮೇಲೆ ಕಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾಗಿದೆ. ಯಾಕೆಂದರೆ ಕಾರ್ನ್ವಾಲಿಸ್ಗೆ ಅಮೇರಿಕನ್ ವಾರಲ್ಲಿ ಅವನು ಡಿಫೀಟ್ ಆದಮೇಲೆ ಅವನಿಗೆ ಪನಿಷ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಪೋಸ್ಟಿಂಗ್ ಥರ ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ಬೀದರ್ಗೆ ಹಾಕ್ಬಿಡ್ತಿದ್ರಲ್ಲ IAS ಆಫೀಸರ್ನ, ಆ ಥರ ಅವನ್ನ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಸೌತ್ ಇಂಡಿಯಾಗೆ ಕಳಿಸ್ತಾರೆ ಮ್ಯಾನೇಜ್ ಮಾಡು ಅಂತ. ಅವನು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಬಂದು ಹೀರೋ ಆಗಿಬಿಡ್ತಾನೆ. ಯಾಕೆಂದರೆ ಹೀ ಗೆಟ್ಸ್ ಸಪೋರ್ಟೆಡ್ in his war with Tipu by the Marathas, by the Nawab of Arcot, by the Travancore regime, by everybody supports him because the number of enemies Tipu has gathered around him was like that. But ನಮಗೆ ಒಂದು ಸೈಡೇ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಿದ್ದರಿಂದ ನಾನು ಟಿಪ್ಪುನ ಇನ್ನೂ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಹೀರೋ ಆಗಿ ಇಮ್ಯಾಜಿನ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡೇ ಬೆಳೆದಿದ್ದು ನಾನು ಟಿಲ್ ವೆರಿ ರೀಸೆಂಟ್ಲಿ.
Sir, just to intervene, ಮಂಗಳೂರಲ್ಲಿ ಬೆಳೆದವ್ರು ನಾವು ಎಸ್ಪೆಷಲಿ ಇಫ್ ಯು ವೆಂಟ್ ಟು ಎನಿ ಸ್ಕೂಲ್ ಅರೌಂಡ್ ಪಾಂಡೇಶ್ವರ್, ನಮ್ಮ ಶಾಲೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ಬಾವಿ ಉಂಟು, ಅದರ ಅಡಿಯಿಂದ ಸೀದಾ ಶ್ರೀರಂಗಪಟ್ಟಣಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗ್ತದೆ, ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಟಿಪ್ಪು ಸುಲ್ತಾನ್ದು ಇದುಂಟು. ಆಲ್ ಆಫ್ ಅಸ್ ಹರ್ಡ್ ದ ಸೇಮ್ ಥಿಂಗ್. ಕ್ಲಾಕ್ ಟವರಲ್ಲಿ ಇದು ಮಾಡಿದ್ರಂತೆ. ಸೊ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ರಾತ್ರಿ ಟಿಪ್ಪುದು ಎಂಥ ಹಾರ್ಸಸ್ ತಿರುಗುದು ಶಬ್ದ ಕೇಳ್ತದಂತೆ. ಆಲ್ ಆಫ್ ದೀಸ್ ಫ್ಯಾನ್ಸಿ ಟೇಲ್ಸ್.
ಅಲ್ಲ, ನಮ್ಮ ಥಿಯೇಟರ್ ಅವರು ಇದು ಟಿಪ್ಪು ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಭಾಳ ಇದು ಸ್ಟೋರಿ, ದೊಡ್ಡ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಸ್ಟೋರೀಸ್ ನಾಟಕಗಳೆಲ್ಲ ಮಾಡಿದೆಲ್ಲ ಇದು ಉಂಟು. ನಮ್ಗೆ ಆ ಥರ ಇಂಪ್ರೆಷನ್ ಇತ್ತು, ನಾ ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಂತಿಲ್ಲ. ನಾನು ನಿಮಗೆ ಯಾಕೆ ಹೇಳ್ತೀನಿ ಅಂದರೆ, ಆ್ಯಕ್ಚುಲಿ ಐ ವಾಂಟ್ ಹಿಮ್ ಟು ರೆಸ್ಪಾಂಡ್ ಟು ದ್ಯಾಟ್. ನೀವು ವಿತ್ ಯುವರ್ ಪರ್ಮಿಷನ್ ನಾನು ಏನು ಹೇಳ್ತೀನಿ ಅಂದರೆ, ಅವರು ಕ್ಯಾಲಿಫೋರ್ನಿಯಾ ಗ್ಯಾಂಗ್ ಅವರು ಇಂಡಿಯಾನೇ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ ಬ್ರಿಟಿಷ್ ಬರೋವ್ರಿಗೂ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರಲ್ಲ. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಸಿಂಪಲ್ ಆನ್ಸರ್ ಏನಿತ್ತಂದರೆ, ಕೊಲಂಬಸ್ ಏನು ಹುಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೊರಟ ಅಂತ ಇತ್ತು. ಇಂಡಿಯಾನೇ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂದರೆ ಏನು ಹುಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೊರಟವನು ಅಂತ. ಬಟ್ ಅವರು ಅದು ಬ್ರಿಟಿಷೇ ಬಂದು ಮಾಡಿದ್ದು ಅಂತ. ಅರುಂಧತಿ ರಾಯ್ ಅವರೊಂದು ವಿಡಿಯೋದಲ್ಲಿದೆ, ಅವ್ರು ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ, ಅವರು ಆ್ಯಸ್ ಸೂನ್ ಎಸ್ ದ ಬ್ರಿಟಿಷ್ ಲೆಫ್ಟ್ ಇಂಡಿಯಾ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಇಂಡಿಯಾ ಗಾಟ್ ಇಂಡಿಪೆಂಡೆನ್ಸ್, ಇಂಡಿಯಾ ಇಮಿಡಿಯೇಟ್ಲಿ ಕಾಲೋನೈಸ್ಡ್ ಮೆನಿ ರೀಜನ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಇಂಡಿಯಾ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ ಅವರು. ವಾಟ್ ಇಟ್ ಡಸ್ ಇಸ್ ಇಟ್ ಗ್ಲೋರಿಫೈಸ್ ದ ಐಡಿಯಾ ಆಫ್ ದ ನೇಷನ್ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್. ದೆರ್ ವಾಸ್ ಅ ಕಲ್ಚರಲ್ ಐಡಿಯಾ ಆಫ್ ಭಾರತ್. ವಿತ್ ಆಲ್ ಇಟ್ಸ್ ಮಿಸ್ಟೇಕ್ಸ್, ದೆರ್ ವಾಸ್ ಅ ಕಲ್ಚರಲ್ ಐಡಿಯಾ ಆಫ್ ಭಾರತ್. ಸೊ ಮೈ ಕ್ವೆಶ್ಚನ್ ಈಸ್, whether he is branded right or left, my question is whether it is important to regain a narrative continuum of India which is derived from Bharat, which is of Bharat. It is still not Bharat, but it is derived from Bharat. I am saying to write a true history of India is enough to be branded right wing in India, I am saying. ನೀವೇನಂತೀರ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಅಂತ? ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಮೈ ಕ್ವೆಶ್ಚನ್.
So true. I can't agree more. I think the problem is truth has only one version. When you have lies, you can have multiple versions. Just now we saw, I think 2 days back, this whole episode of this Fatima Sheikh. I don't know how many of you have been following that on social media. So for the longest time, this character was created called Fatima Sheikh, who was supposedly an associate of Savitribai Phule and Jyotiba Phule. And so that was created to, show the unity between the Dalits and the Muslims. And she was the first Muslim school teacher, this, that. On that, so many Western academicians have written books and papers. Just 2-3 days back, the man, Professor Dilip Mandal, he actually wrote a tweet out saying there is no person called Fatima Sheikh, I created her out of nowhere. So you can imagine the kind of so the entire edifice, Jai Bhim, Jai Meem, falls in 1 minute, where truth comes. Truth is the best disinfectant. In fact, in my last book, Kashi Vishwanath, History Waiting for Shivanalli, my blood boiled when I saw that subterfuge. Aurangzeb's own Masere Alamgiri very clearly talks about him sending his soldiers to destroy Kashi Vishwanath Mandir in April 1669. And by September 1669, there is a written farman that comes saying, by your orders, we have destroyed all the temples in Banaras, including that of Bishnath, Apabhramsha of Vishwanath. But after independence, you had this scholar called Bishambar Nath Pandey, who is a very great Sanskrit Pandit or historian, and also a great Congress leader. He also became the governor of some state, Sahitya Award, Padma Award, all those awards. He creates a fairy tale. And what his fairy tale, though it's digressing from the subject since you asked me. So once upon a time, Aurangzeb goes on a trip to Bengal. Now in none of Aurangzeb's authorized biographies, there is mention of him going directly to Bengal. He always sent his army and Sainya. But in this Kapola Kalpita story, it is allowed. So he went there. ಜೊತೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಅವರು ಲಾಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಹಿಂದೂ ರಾಜ್ಪೂತ್ ರೂಲರ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ರಾಜ್ಪುತಾನ ಅವ್ರನ್ನ ಕರ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅವ್ರ ಜೊತೆ ಅವ್ರ ಹೆಂಡ್ತಿರು ಅವ್ರ ಜೊತೆ ಹೋಗ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಆನ್ ದ ವೇ ಆಗ್ರಾಯಿಂದ ಬೆಂಗಾಲ್ ಹೋಗುವಾಗ ವಾರಣಾಸಿ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ಆಲ್ ದ ಹಿಂದೂ ರಾಜಾಸ್ ಗೋ ಅಂಡ್ ಸೇ ಜಹಾಪನಾ, ದಿಸ್ ಇಸ್ ಸಚ್ ಎ ಇಂಪಾರ್ಟೆಂಟ್ ಸ್ಪಾಟ್ ಫಾರ್ ಅಸ್, ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ವಿ ಸ್ಟೇ ಓವರ್, ರಾತ್ರಿ ಇಲ್ಲೇ ಇದ್ದು ಪೂಜೆ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗ್ಬೋದಾ ಅಂತ. ಹಿ ವಾಸ್ ಆಫ್ಟರ್ ಆಲ್ ಸಚ್ ಅ ಜನರಸ್, ಲಾರ್ಜ್ ಹಾರ್ಟೆಡ್, ಸೆಕ್ಯುಲರ್ ರೂಲರ್. ಸೊ ಹಿ ಸೆಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬನ್ನಿ ಅಂತ. The Rajas who asked for the permission, they don't go themselves. ರಾಣಿಯರನ್ನ ಕಳಿಸ್ತಾರಂತೆ. ಆ ರಾಣಿರು, ನೋ ಸೋಲ್ಜರ್ಸ್, ನೋ ಬಾಡಿಗಾರ್ಡ್ಸ್, ದೇ ಗೋ ಅಲೋನ್, ದೇ ಡಿಪ್ ಇನ್ ದ ಗಂಗಾ, ಗೋ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ವರ್ಷಿಪ್ ವಿಶ್ವನಾಥ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಕಮ್ ಬ್ಯಾಕ್. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಒಂದು ಹೆಡ್ ಕೌಂಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದಾಗ ಒನ್ ರಾಣಿ ವಾಸ್ ಮಿಸ್ಸಿಂಗ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಶಿ ವಾಸ್ ದ ರಾಣಿ ಆಫ್ ಕಚ್. ಸೊ ಔರಂಗಜೇಬ್ ಇಸ್ ವೆರಿ ಆ್ಯಂಗರ್ಡ್. ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಹೋದ್ಲು ಅಂತ ಎಲ್ಲ ಸೈನಿಕರನ್ನ ಕಳಿಸ್ತಾರೆ. ಸೊ ಇನ್ ಪಾಂಡೇಜಿ ಸ್ಟೋರಿ ಆಲ್ಮೋಸ್ಟ್ ಆ 50s ಬಾಲಿವುಡ್ ಫಿಲ್ಮ್ಸ್ ಬರ್ತಾಯಿತ್ತಲ್ಲ ಆ ಥರ, ಈ ಸೈನಿಕರು ಹೋಗಿ ಗರ್ಭಗುಡಿನ ವಾಲ್ನ ಮುಟ್ಟಿದ್ರೆ ಅದಾಗದೇ ಸ್ಲೈಡ್ ಆಗೋಯ್ತಂತೆ ಆ ಗೋಡೆ ಸ್ಲೈಡ್ ಆದಮೇಲೆ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಕೆಳಗೆ ಒಂದು ಸುರಂಗ ಮಾರ್ಗ, ನೀವು ಹೇಳ್ದಂಗೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿಂದ ಶ್ರೀರಂಗಪಟ್ಟಣ ಆ ಥರ ಒಂದು ಸುರಂಗ ಮಾರ್ಗ ವಿಶ್ವನಾಥನ ಗರ್ಭಗುಡಿ ಕೆಳಗಡೆ ಇತ್ತಂತೆ. ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಪಾಪ ಹೋಗಿ ನೋಡಿದ್ರೆ ಆ ರಾಣಿ ನಗ್ನಾವಸ್ಥೆಯಲ್ಲಿ, ಬಟ್ಟೆ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಆಭೂಷಣ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಅಳ್ತಾ ಕೂತಿದ್ಲಂತೆ. ಯಾರು ಏನಾಯಿತು ಹೇಗೆ ಅಂದರೆ, ನೋ ಪ್ರೈಸಸ್ ಫಾರ್ ಗೆಸ್ಸಿಂಗ್, ದಿ ಕಲ್ಪ್ರಿಟ್ ವಾಸ್ ಆಲ್ವೇಸ್ ದ ಬ್ರಾಹ್ಮಿನ್. ಸೊ ದ ಬ್ರಾಹ್ಮಿನ್ಸ್, ಇಲ್ಲಿನ ಪೂಜಾರಿಗಳು ತುಂಬ ದುಷ್ಟರು, ಈ ಥರ ಎಲ್ಲ ಧನಿಕರು ಯಾರಾದರೂ ಬಂದರೆ ಅಥವಾ ಮಹಿಳೆಯರು ಬಂದರೆ ಅವ್ರ ಜೊತೆ ದೌರ್ಜನ್ಯ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ ಅಂತ ದೋಸ್ ಪೀಪಲ್ ಟೋಲ್ಡ್. ಸೊ ದೆನ್ ದೀಸ್ Hindu Rajas went and told Aurangzeb that this is such a horrible place, ಇದನ್ನು ನೀವು ಕೆಡವಬಿಡಿ ಅಂತ. Aurangzeb was not at all willing to do it. On public demand, no, you should ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಹಿಂದೂಗಳ ಒತ್ತಾಯದ ಮೇಲೆ ಕಾಶಿ ವಿಶ್ವನಾಥ್ ಮಂದಿರನ ಧ್ವಂಸ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರಂತೆ. ಮಥುರಾನಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾವ ರಾಣಿ ಸಿಕ್ಕಾಕೊಂಡಿದ್ಲು ಅಥವಾ ಸೋಮನಾಥ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಬೇರೆ ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಬೇರೆ ಫೇರಿ ಟೇಲ್ಸ್ ಸೃಷ್ಟಿಸಬೇಕು. ನಾವು ಹಿಸ್ಟ್ರಿನಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಏನು ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು ಒಂದು ಸೋರ್ಸು, ಸೈಟೇಷನ್ ಅಂತ ಕೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. ಸೊ ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ ವೇರ್ ಡಿಡ್ ಪಾಂಡೇಜಿ ಗೆಟ್ ಹಿಸ್ ಇನ್ಫಾರ್ಮೇಷನ್? ಬಿಫೋರ್ around the time of independence, Pattabi Sitaramayya annoru, Congress president, also a historian who wrote about the Congress history, Feathers and Stone anno ondu idaralli, he says that one of my friends, that friend knows a mullah in Varanasi, in Lucknow, and this mullah has a very rare manuscript in which this particular incident is mentioned. Before I could reach the mullah, the friend died or mullah died or something happened. I could not get the manuscript, but by and large this is a very accepted story. So unknown mullah, unknown friend, unknown manuscript, idu moorun itkondu one whole lie is created so much. And believe you me, almost 3-4 PhDs have references of this Kachharani's outrage in the Kashi Vishwanath Mandir. So sometimes you feel, should we laugh? Should we get angry? Fatima Sheikh, Kashi Vishwanath, Tipu Sultan, the number of lies that have been passed on. And one solna 100 sati ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಅದು ಸತ್ಯ ಅಂತ ಅನ್ಸ್ಕೊಂಡ್ಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ. As that famous saying goes, by the time the truth has tied the lace of its shoe, the lie has crossed 3 times and come back anta. That has, I think, happened with a lot of aspects of Indian history.
I just want to briefly respond to this. See, even when the truth is there sometimes, staring you in the face, you can be convinced, by the lie. I'll give 2 examples. First, I'll start with his book. ನಮ್ಮ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರು ಕಳಸಪಾಳ್ಯಂ ರೋಡ್ ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ, ಬೆಂಗಳೂರಿಯರು ಯಾರು ಇದ್ದರೆ ಆ ರೋಡ್ ಹೆಸರು ನಿಮಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಾ? ಅದು ನವಾಬ್ ಹೈದರ್ ಅಲಿ ರೋಡ್ ಅಂತ. ಆದರೆ ಇವರು ಟಿಪ್ಪು ಸುಲ್ತಾನ್. ಈ ಪುಸ್ತಕವನ್ನು ಓದಿ ನೀವು, ಸುಲ್ತಾನ್ ಹೆಂಗಾದ್ರು ಅಂತ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗುತ್ತೆ. ಆದರೆ ಅಂದರೆ ಬೇರೆಯವರು ಆರೋಪಿಸಿರ್ಬೋದು, ಯಾಕೆಂದರೆ ಕಲಿಫೇಟ್ ಇತ್ತು, ಸುಲ್ತಾನೇಟ್ ಇತ್ತು ತುರ್ಕಿಯಲ್ಲಿ, ಒತ್ತಮಾನ್ ಎಂಪೈರ್ ಇತ್ತು, ಆಲ್ ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ದೇರ್. ಬಟ್ ನಾನು ಹೇಳ್ತಿರೋದು ಇದೇ ಈ ಪರ್ಷಿಯನ್ನಲ್ಲಿ, ಇದು ತುರ್ಕಿಯಲ್ಲಿ, ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಒಬ್ಬ ಪಾಕಿಸ್ತಾನಿ ವೆರಿ ರೆಸ್ಪೆಕ್ಟೆಡ್ ಕಾಲಮ್ನಿಸ್ಟ್ ಒಮಾರ್ ಸಮಥಿಂಗ್, ಅವರು ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪ್ರೆಸ್ ಟ್ರಿಬ್ಯೂನಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ಅವ್ರ ಕಾಲಮಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ಸತಿ ಬರೆದಿದ್ರು, ಟಿಪ್ಪು ಅನ್ನೋದು ಬಂದಿರೋದು ತಿಪ್ಪೆ ಅನ್ನೋ ಹೆಸರಿಂದ. ನಾವು ತಿಪ್ಪೇಸ್ವಾಮಿ ಅಲ್ಲ, ನಾ ಹೇಳ್ತಿದ್ದೆ ಅದು ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಆ ತಿಪ್ಪೇಸ್ವಾಮಿ ಅನ್ನೋ ಡೇಟಿಗೆ ತಿಪ್ಪೆದು ರುದ್ರಸ್ವಾಮಿ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಇದನ್ನು ಹರಕೆಯನ್ನು ಹೊತ್ಕೊಂಡು ಯಾರು, ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಅದು ಕನ್ನಡ ಹೆಸರೇ ಅದು ಅಂತ. ಇವ್ರದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ಬೇರೆ ಇದೆ, ಯಾರೋ ಒಂದು ಸೂಫಿ ಸ್ಟೈಲ್ ಔಲಿಯಾ ಅವರು ಆರ್ಕಾಟಲ್ಲಿ ಅವ್ರದ್ದು ಅಂತ ಇವರೇ ಬರೀತಾರೆ. ನಾ ಏನು ಹೇಳ್ತೀನಿ, ಅದು ಕೊಟ್ಟ ಮೇಲೂ ನಂಬೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಏನೇನು ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆನೂ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. ದ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ಈಸ್ ತಾಜ್ ಮಹಲ್ ಸ್ಟೋರಿ. ಇಟ್ಸ್ ದ ಮೆಟಫರ್ ಆಫ್ ರೊಮ್ಯಾಂಟಿಕ್ ಮೊಘಲ್ ಶಾಜಹಾನ್. ಆಕೆನ ಮದುವೆ ಆದಾಗ ಆಕೆಗೆ 15-16 ವರ್ಷ. ಶಿ ಗೇವ್ ಹಿಮ್ 16 or 17 children ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಶಿ ಡೈಡ್ ವೆನ್ ಶಿ ವಾಸ್ 36. ಯಾವ ಥರ ಲೈಫ್ನ ಲೀಡ್ ಮಾಡಿರ್ಬೋದು ಆಕೆ? ಆಕೆನ ಹೂತಾಕಕ್ಕೆ ಮುಂಚೆನೇ ಹೂತಾಕಿದ್ದಂಗಿದೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ. ಅದು ಯಾವ ಥರ ರೊಮ್ಯಾನ್ಸು? ಆಮೇಲೆ ಆಕೆ ಸತ್ತ ಮೇಲೆ ಹಿ ಮ್ಯಾರಿಡ್ ಹರ್ ಸಿಸ್ಟರ್. ದಿಸ್ ಈಸ್ ಯುವರ್ ಇದು ಮೆಟಫರ್ ಆಫ್ ರೊಮ್ಯಾನ್ಸ್. ಆ್ಯಕ್ಚುಲಿ ಸುಮ್ಮನೆ ಆ ಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ಸನ್ನು ಓದಿದ್ರೆ ನಿಮಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗುತ್ತೆ ಈ ಥರ ಬರೀಬಾರ್ದು ಅಂತ. ಆದರೆ ಎಷ್ಟು ವರ್ಷ ನಮಗೆ ಯಾಮಾರಿಸಿ ಕೊಡಿಸಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಅದೆಲ್ಲ ಇಮ್ಯಾಜಿನ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ.
So from Sultan, where it comes, there are a lot of these titles. Even now when we look at what media is doing, for all the umpteen podcasts you have been doing, most of them give you a dichotomy. Was he a religious bigot or a freedom fighter? Was he A or B? But most of it is saying, painting him in the right-wing colors of, oh, was he Islamic? If you read the book, there will be no doubts. But first, if we can debunk the fact that if freedom fighter, freedom from whom? And if you can list, since there are so many instances of where, going by today's standards, Tipu, if you just list out, and even if you use AI and tell 1, 2, 3, 4 are the tasks he's accomplished, what does this make him? It will just return jihadist ruler.
ಸೊ ಜಸ್ಟ್ ಬಿಫೋರ್ ಐ ಆನ್ಸರ್ ದಟ್, ಐ ಆಮ್ ಶೋರ್ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕದಲ್ಲಿ ಮ್ಯಾಂಗ್ಳೂರ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಟಿಪ್ಪು ಸುಲ್ತಾನ್ ಯಾರು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳೋ ಅವಶ್ಯಕತೆ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಬಟ್ ಮೇ ಬಿ ಜಸ್ಟ್ ವೆರಿ ಬ್ರೀಫ್ಲಿ. ಸೊ ಹೈದರ್ ಅಲಿ ವಾಸ್ ಆ್ಯಕ್ಚುಲಿ bought off by the Maharaja of Mysore, Dodda Krishnaraj Wadiyar, ಬಿಡುಗಡೆ ಮಾಡಿಸಿ when he was 4 years old and his elder brother Shahbaz was 8 years old. Their father died, Fateh Muhammad died in a battle, and they owed some money to somebody, Abbas Quli Khan. ಅದನ್ನು ವಾಪಸ್ ತಗೊಳ್ಳೋದಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರ ದೇ ಲೂಟೆಡ್ ದೇರ್ ಹೌಸ್. ಅದ್ರ ಜೊತೆಗೆ 2 ಹುಡುಗರನ್ನ ಒಂದು ನಗಾಡನಲ್ಲಿ ಹಾಕಿ ಅದ್ರ ಮೇಲೆ ದೇ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟೆಡ್ ಬೀಟಿಂಗ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಸೋ ಆನ್. ಆ ಒಂದು ಪರಿಸ್ಥಿತಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಹೈದರ್ಸ್ ಮದರ್ ಮಜೀದಾ ಬೇಗಮ್ ಶ್ರೀರಂಗಪಟ್ಟಣಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗ್ತಾರೆ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಮಹಾರಾಜರಿಗೆ ಬೇಡ್ಕೋತಾರೆ, ನನ್ನ 2 ಗಂಡು ಮಕ್ಕಳನ್ನ ನೀವು ಹೇಗಾದರೂ ಬಿಡುಗಡೆ ಮಾಡಿಸಿ ಅಂತ. ದ ಮಹಾರಾಜ ಟೇಕ್ಸ್ ಪಿಟಿ ಆನ್ ದೆಮ್. ಲಿಟಲ್ ಡಿಡ್ ಹಿ ನೋ ವಾಟ್ ವಾಸ್ ಕಮಿಂಗ್ ಹಿಸ್ ವೇ ಆರ್ ಹಿಸ್ ಡೈನಾಸ್ಟೀಸ್ ವೇ. ಹಿ ಟೇಕ್ಸ್ ಪಿಟಿ, ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ದುಡ್ಡು ಕೊಟ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ನೀವು ಒನ್ಸ್ ಯು ಕಮ್ ಆಫ್ ಏಜ್ ಯು ವಿಲ್ ಗೆಟ್ ಇನ್ ಟು ದಿ ಮೈಸೂರಿಯನ್ ಆರ್ಮಿ ಅಂತ ಕೂಡ ಪ್ರಾಮಿಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಸೊ 1749 is when Haidar enters the firmament of Mysore. Devanhalli siege under the leadership of Karachuri Nanjarajayya, who was the Dalwai at that time. ಅವಾಗಿಂದ 1749 to 1760, when he usurps the kingdom, in just those 11-12 years, the manner in which this man, hunts with the hare, hunts with the hounds and runs with the hare ಅಂತೇನು ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. Every rule book, I think he'll put all our modern politicians to shame today. The unholy alliances, the same Karachuri Nanjarajayya who was his patron in the middle of the war, he'll just dump him. Again, he'll go back to him. ಈ ಥರ ಮಾಡಿ he manages to carve out such a empire for himself, and Paristhiti is also, I think, helps him so much that he, 1761 he becomes a Sarvadhikari, the supreme dictator of Mysore, and Immadi Krishnaraj Wadiyar is then the Maharaja. But Haidar had a sense of real politic and strategy. If he usurps the whole kingdom, a Hindu kingdom of a Hindu majority with a Hindu ruler who had actually given shelter to him, it will not go down well with the people. So he allowed the Wadiyar to be on the throne as a puppet, titular ruler. Immadi Krishnaraj Wadiyar ಆದಮೇಲೆ ನಂಜರಾಜ ಒಡೆಯರ್, ಬೆಟ್ಟದ ಚಾಮರಾಜ ಒಡೆಯರ್ ಇವರೆಲ್ಲ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರು. The minute came of age, or they managed to get a mind of their own. Very mysteriously, a glass of milk would go to the Maharaja's chamber. Next morning, sattogirtare. So poisoned milk that would go to the Maharaja, and then one ಚಿಕ್ಕ ಮಗುನ ಸಿಂಹಾಸನದ ಮೇಲೆ ಹಾಕೋದು. ಆಲ್ ದಿ ಫರ್ಮಾನ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಕಿಂಗ್ಡಮ್ ವಿಲ್ ಬಿ ಒಡೆಯರ್ ಕಾಲ್ಗೆ ತೋರಿಸ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು, ಆಲ್ ದಿ ಆರ್ಡರ್ಸ್ ಆರ್ ಗೋಯಿಂಗ್ ಔಟ್ ಇನ್ ಹಿಸ್ ನೇಮ್, ಟ್ರೋಫೀಸ್ ಆಫ್ ವಾರ್ ಆರ್ ಸಬ್ಮಿಟೆಡ್ ಟು ಹಿಮ್, ಬಟ್ ಎವ್ರಿಬಡಿ ನೋಸ್ ವೇರ್ ದ ರಿಯಲ್ ಪವರ್ ಲೇಸ್. ಹಿ ಡಸಂಟ್ ಮ್ಯಾನೇಜ್.
ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರೆಸಿಡೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಹಂಗೆ ಇದ್ರು ಕೆಲವರು.
ಐ ಡಿಂಟ್ ವಾಂಟ್ ಟು ಸೇ ದಟ್ ಯು ಆಲ್ಮೋಸ್ಟ್ ಅ ಸಿಮಿಲರ್ ಅನಾಲಜಿ. ಸೊ ಬಟ್ so Hyder understood, and I think that is why he managed to maintain the kingdom. And ನೀವು ಹೇಳ್ದಂಗೆ, you said what were the wars. If the 4 Anglo-Mysore wars that were fought, ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ the first 2 wars were completely under the leadership of Hyder. And to tell the truth, Mysore had unprecedented success. They beat the British black and blue in the first Anglo-Mysore war. They went to the very gates of Madras. A very humiliating treaty had to be signed to end that. And shockwaves went all the way to London. In the parliament there was discussion, who is this Hyder Ali of Mysore and so on. The board of directors there was unhappy. All that happened in the first Anglo-Mysore war. Even the second Anglo-Mysore war, you had the Battle of Polilur. So Tipu played a role in all these, but as a subsidiary to his father, under his umbrella. There also the Battle of Polilur, you had Colonel Bailey's army, which was completely decimated. Adan ಈಗಲೂ ದರ್ಯಾದೌಲತ್ ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ there is a mural painting, Lally Bailey Yuddha anta. Lally was the French who was fighting on the part of Mysore, and Bailey. And there the rockets, Mysore rockets, which was not discovered by these people. There was already rocket technology. They improvised on it. There was a metal casing that they put, because of which the maddu ಏನಿರುತ್ತೆ ಅದನ್ನು it could be packed more tightly, and so it could go for longer distances and more thrust also. 1 kilometer it could go further. It caused a lot of damage to the Marathas, to the British, no doubt on that. And Hector Munro, who was the hero of Plassey and Buxar, he literally throws away all his ammunition in the tank in Kanchipuram and runs away to Madras to save his life. So that was the horror that Hyder at least created in their minds. And he dies in the middle of the battle at Narsingrayanpet. And then Tipu takes over. And then he was in Malabar nalli, against the Nayar revolt that he was crushing there. But then the scene shifts to Mangalore. And so for almost 1 year, Campbell and his whole group, which which is holed up in the fort here, Tipu lays a siege. He ends the Second Mysore War in a very high note. The Treaty of Mangalore of 1784, probably the last document where an Indian power had an upper hand against the European, no doubt. In fact, the British soldiers in the fort of Mangalore, they were put to so much of hardship. They were left to eating rodents and all of that to keep alive. So that was there, but from there you see a steady downfall. The other 2 wars which he fought independently, the 3rd and the 4th Mysore war, in the 3rd he lost half his kingdom. He had a war indemnity of 3.5 crores, which was much more than the budget of the state was 2 crores. ಈಗ ಬ್ಯಾಂಗ್ಳೂರ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು 2 BHK ಫ್ಲ್ಯಾಟು ಸಿಗೋದಿಲ್ಲ ಫಾರ್ ದಟ್ ಮನಿ, ಬಟ್ ದೇ the 2 crore thing, then 3.5 crores to do that. He had to give away 2 of his sons, Abdul Khalik and Moizuddin, as hostages. And in the 4th war, he was killed in the battle on 4th of May 1799. So he actually never won a single war against the British. Why would the British demonize someone who never won against them? If they had to demonize someone, they should have demonized Hyder, about whom they have very laudatory things that they write about him. And this whole freedom fight and so on, the same leftist historians keep telling that there was never a country like India. Only the British came and united us and made us India. If there was no India, what India was you fighting for? So it can't be both ways, that you say this and that. And he was taking the help of the French to defeat the British. So by chance, if Tipu had won, I think this conversation we will all be having in French instead of English, because it would have become a French colony. They had no less colonial ambitions than the British. They were the initiators. Dupleix in the Carnatic Wars, you see how the role that they played. And he also writes to the Islamic Caliphate, the larger Muslim Brotherhood or Ummah, appealing to their religious sentiments. 2 years before his death, he writes to Zaman Shah of Afghanistan, the Durrani ruler, very clear instructions or plan that you come and invade India. 2 years, let us conduct this jihad. In the first year, let us, flush out the whole of North India from kafirs. And the terms are used, kafir, the true faith, jihad. There's no ambiguity. It's his own words.
Nazreen is something he uses for the Christians also, Nazreen.
Nazarenes for the Christians. And you first year you come and we'll flush out the whole of North India from kafirs. In the second year we'll flush out South India, and then we'll both unite and divide this whole country among ourselves as a Muslim caliphate. These are his own words, not someone's extrapolation. So if he had won, either we would have become a French colony or a Muslim nation. Undoubtedly. So I really don't know what this freedom fighter business is all about. What country was he fighting for? He was fighting for his own honor, his own kingdom, and his own needs, like many of the other players of the time were.
But we have conveniently given him a holier than thou crown for decades together, calling him the Tiger of Mysore, another title.
Yeah, that is why I think in most of my books, even Savarkar, I don't want to call him Veer Savarkar or Mafi Veer Savarkar. That is for the reader to decide. Here also, I don't want to call him tiger or tyrant. It is for the reader to decide. I think we should not infantilize our reader. History, itihasa ನೀವು ಹೇಳ್ದಂಗೆ ಇದು ಹೀಗೆ ಆಯಿತು ಅಷ್ಟೇ. You just illuminate the documents and the archives, and after reading all this, if you still think he is a tiger, so be it. If you think he was a tyrant, I certainly think he was.
If he was a tiger, then probably he was a man-eater who had already got a taste of blood because of the various incidents that, if you can take us through, I mean, just reading one line and then you can tell us more. One line, it says, God willing, on one of his dreams, if you can move to Tipu's dreams, God willing, on arriving near this cow, which looks like a tiger, I shall with my own hand cut it along with its calf into pieces. That and A Day in the Life of Sultan, all of those are as gory gets.
No, the best part of Tipu Sultan was he was extremely educated, very well read. He wrote copiously, and he was a control freak. To all his embassies that he sent to France or to the Middle East, every day what you need to do, he used to write. He used to write and write and write. So lots of his writings in Persian, not in Kannada by the way. Most of it is in Persian. Only a few letters to Sringeri, those are in Kannada. Most of the others. So every night he would have very vivid dreams apparently. And every morning he would wake up and spend 2 hours in his toilet, sitting and jotting down all that he remembered. So in fact,
So
I
Tipu
found
is the original cell
I found
phone
the
of
original, manuscript of his dreams in the India Office Library in London. In fact, when she showed me that this thing, I said, considering the place it was written in, it was a little initially hesitation to touch it. But in that, there is no ambiguity again. As you mentioned, so many such dreams, ಒಂದು ದೊಡ್ಡ ಪಾತ್ರೆನಲ್ಲಿ ಸಾಲಿಗ್ರಾಮಗಳು ಮತ್ತು ಬಾದಾಮಿ ಹಾಕಿ ಅದನ್ನು ಇನ್ ಹಿಸ್ ಡ್ರೀಮ್ ಹಿ ಈಸ್ ಸೀಯಿಂಗ್ ದಟ್ ಹಿ ಈಸ್ ರೊಟೇಟಿಂಗ್ ದಿಸ್ ಹೋಲ್ ಥಿಂಗ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಸಡನ್ಲಿ ಹಿ ಈಸ್ ಸೀಯಿಂಗ್ ಆಲ್ ದ ಸಾಲಿಗ್ರಾಮಾಸ್ ಆರ್ ಬಿಕಮಿಂಗ್ ಬಾದಾಮಿ. So when he wakes up, he tries to interpret that Allah is giving me the order that ಸಾಲಿಗ್ರಾಮ ಅಂದರೆ ಹಿಂದೂಗಳು ಅದನ್ನು ಧರ್ಮಾಂತರಣ ಮಾಡಿ ಬಾದಾಮಿಯಾಗಿ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. So I have been divinely ordained to convert all the Hindus to, so nothing wrong, it's coming from above. Suddenly Prophet Muhammad will appear, or some angel and fairy and all these will appear. Ashtu dura hogi, allondu church ide, allondu devasthana ide, adan kedu banni. These are the dreams. In fact, I got the dreams psychoanalyzed by a psychiatrist, because I think dreams are the index of your subconscious mind. And this person also said this is a person who is so consumed by hatred. I think probably not a single day lasted when there was no war, when there was no killings and so on. So the deep influence that it had on his psyche was also evident. You spoke about the outrages, and I think speaking about that in Mangalore is so pertinent. Now, a lot of people say, all kings were violent. ಆ ಕಾಲದಲ್ಲಿ ಹಾಗೆ ಇರ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತು, pre-modern era, kingship and violence are very closely interlinked. No doubt. ವಾರ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಕೊಲ್ಯಾಟ್ರಲ್ ಡ್ಯಾಮೇಜ್ ಆಗೋದು ಸಿವಿಲ್ ಸೊಸೈಟಿ. ಇವಾಗಲೂ ವಾಟ್ ಎವರ್ ವಾರ್ಸ್ ಆರ್ ಹ್ಯಾಪನಿಂಗ್, ಸಿವಿಲ್ ಸೊಸೈಟಿ ಸಫರ್ಸ್. ಹೈದರ್ ವಾಸ್ ಆಲ್ಸೋ ವೆರಿ ಕ್ರೂಯಲ್. ಒಂದೊಂದು ನಾಯರ್ ತಲೆಗೆ ₹5 he used to distribute. ಕೊಡವರ್ ತಲೆ, ಒಂದು ತಲೆ ತಂದು ಕೊಟ್ಟರೆ ₹5 ಬಹುಮಾನ. ಒಂದು ನಾಯರ್ ಹೆಂಗಸನ್ನ ತಂದು ಕೊಟ್ಟರೆ ₹3 ಬಹುಮಾನ. And this is documented. He used to sit and distribute for whoever brought that. So he was also violent. But Tipu was more violent than the rest of them, and particularly when it is driven by religious and theological sanction, I think then it becomes doubly, problematic. You can't brush it away and say everybody was violent, so he can get a free pass because of that. And targeting people based on their community. Now, in Srirangpatna,
And on days you've said
on
that
days which were
special
important to that community, on a festival. So Srirangpatnadalli, on Naraka Chaturdashi, 700 Mandya Mayangar, men, women and children brought to this Lakshmi Narasimha temple which is there. ಅಲ್ಲಿ ದೀಪಾವಳಿಗೆ ಔತಣ ಕೊಟ್ಟು ಅವ್ರು ಊಟ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರುವಾಗ ಎಲಿಫೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ವರ್ ಸೆಂಟ್ ಇನ್ and they were trampled to death. Why? Because two people of that community, Tirumal Rao and Narayan Rao, known as the Mysore Pradhans, they were acting as messengers to Maharani Lakshmi Ammanni to take all the messages to Madras, to the British. Aur siglilla anta aur entire samudayavannu target ಮಾಡೋದು ಅಂದರೆ it was, what was the fault of those little children who were part of that carnage? Similarly, the Mangalore Christians, the Canara Christians, various documents are there, Abbe Du Bois, Hamilton, Imperial Gazetteer, Barkur manuscript in Kannada. Anything between 40,000 to 80,000 Christians from here, Canara Christians, who were normal laborers and farmers, Athara people, they were all, many of them tied to the legs of elephants and dragged all the way from here to Srirangpatna, 250-300 kilometers. Pregnant women also being forced to march, and those documents are there in the Barkur manuscript, in contemporary records, many of them delivering babies on the way, the mothers or the children dying, no proper funeral also, dogs and vultures and jackals are coming and eating away their bodies. The Netrekere that we have here, river of blood, that is where the blood of all these people, the river turned red. And once they went there, they had to convert. If they did not convert, their noses and lips would be cut off and they would be paraded on donkeys and all of that. And 27 churches in and around Mangalore, South Canara and North Canara, Honnavar, Bantwal, Mulkeel, almost 27, including the Milagres Church here, which was rebuilt later in 1911. And those stones were used to build the Sultan Batteri Tower House, which we so wonderfully go and commemorate. And these things are there in Konkani literature. In fact, Kolegars, Kole in Koele, how do you pronounce it in Konkani? So there's a surname called Kolegars. They derived it because Kole in Konkani, I don't know how I'm pronouncing it, is dried leaves. So a heap of leaves these people used to hide under to get saved from Tipu, and that is how their family itself got that surname of Kolegars. So the oral memory or the living, you can't say this is some long story which doesn't affect us today. Even these Christians were taken out on Ash Wednesday, which was one of their holy times before Easter. So Naraka Chaturdashi, Ash Wednesday, why to target communities only on that? And what was the crime of the poor Christians, normal Christians here? That some of the Portuguese bishops had sabotaged and associated with the British during the Second Mysore War, and the punishment for that, the bishops ran away to Goa. So none of them were faced the axe. The burden of that fell on the common Christians of this place. Similarly, the Nayars and the Thiyas in Malabar and Kodavas in Kodagu. Ivatgu, I think 12th December is commemorated as Martyrs' Day. Devati Param Jagdalli. Again, subterfuge everywhere. Call about thousands of them saying, for negotiation we are calling you, so come unarmed. So they all believe him and come, and then they are all massacred. Again, thousands and thousands deported. As I said, even dead Kodavas to be converted. So when our subject himself is writing everything, speaking everything, telling it with so much of pride that I did this, today's historians and Buddhijivis, they say, oh no, it is exaggeration. Where crimes become a virtue, that is why you have to exaggerate and say I killed so many more people. That itself is very deeply problematic.
Also, in the same context where you talk about the Bhat, you say how Mohibul Hassan says that they converted in order to escape the boredom of prison life.
Boredom of prison life, they converted to Islam. Yes. This is Mohibul Hassan, one of the AMU, clique. Many of them ವಾಲಂಟರಿಲಿ ಟುಕ್ ಟು ಇಸ್ಲಾಂ. ಹಿ ಕಂಟೆಸ್ಟ್ ಎವ್ರಿಥಿಂಗ್. ಅಷ್ಟು ಜನ ಕೊಡಗಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಇರೋಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯ ಇಲ್ಲ. ದ ಓವರ್ ಆಲ್ ಪಾಪ್ಯುಲೇಷನ್ ಇಟ್ ಸೆಲ್ಫ್ ವಾಸ್ ಸೋ ಮಚ್, ವಿಚ್ ಆಲ್ಸೋ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಟ್ರೈ ಟು ರಿಬರ್ಟ್, ಸೇಯಿಂಗ್ ದೇರ್ ಈಸ್ ಅ ಪಾಸಿಬಿಲಿಟಿ ದಟ್ ದೇರ್ ಕುಡ್ ಬಿ 1 lakh ಪೀಪಲ್ ಇನ್ ಕೂರ್ಗ್. ಅದನ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಆಲ್ಮೋಸ್ಟ್ ಅಗೇನ್ 70,000-80,000. And ಎಲ್ಲ ಕಡೆ, ವೆದರ್ ಇಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಇನ್ ಮಲಬಾರ್ ಆರ್ ಕೊಡಗು, the Mapillas, the converted people would be asked to come and settle down, and that caused so much of friction in the society. You had the Mapilla rebellion, Mopla rebellion in 1921, so many centuries after Tipu Sultan, and these lived memories which are there, I think intergenerational trauma that passes on. ಇವತ್ತಿಗೂ ಮಂಡ್ಯ ಮಯಂಗಾರ್ ಡು ನಾಟ್ ಭಾರದ್ವಾಜ್ ಗೋತ್ರಕ್ಕೆ ಸೇರಿದವರು ದೀಪಾವಳಿ ಸೆಲೆಬ್ರೇಟ್ ಮಾಡೋದಿಲ್ಲ. I think a few days later they do it. Or even the archdiocese, the bishop, when this Tipu Jayanti nonsense started, of course Congress ಏನು ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ BJP has to oppose, BJP ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ Congress has to oppose, that is understood. But civil society that came together, the groups of Christians would not have had anything common with the BJP's politics. So they also coming out and saying, ಇಂಥ ಒಂದು ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಪೂರ್ವಜರಿಗೆ ಇಷ್ಟೆಲ್ಲ ವೈಲೆನ್ಸ್ ಮಾಡಿದವ್ರನ್ನ, you are celebrating him as a Jayanti. So what he did there was very similar to what maybe General Dyer did in Jallianwala Bagh, what he did to the Mandya Mayangars. So naale Dyer Jayanti, Hitler Jayanti, do we celebrate those also? I mean, nowhere. Okay, he was a brave soldier. He was very, very, always given to warfare. Totally understood. But he did not win a single battle, as I said, against the British. And his social report card, I think finally at the end of the day, the assessment of any king or queen is what is the social report card? How did the people actually benefit in their regime? A striking example is a contemporary of Tipu Sultan is, unfortunately, Devi Ahilyabai Holkar. At the same time, she died in 1796, he dies in 1799. Ahilyabai was a welfare state in the true sense of the term. She would say, I'm not the queen only of the human beings, but also of the animals and birds. So in the summer months, she would keep water and food grains for dogs and cats and birds. The Narmada, that is also something, environmental consciousness, Narmada cleaning, everybody to be taken along. We never have an Ahilyabai Jayanti. We don't know when she was born or when she died. But we celebrate someone like this. I do not agree to this BJP fixation that let us take him away from the textbook. You cannot wish away your history.
I think not the BJP, but it was the Congress itself. When there was a lot of uproar about Salam Aarti happening, they changed it to Namaskar Aarti.
The cautionary note here is it's a big book, and it has, it mentions in detail the letters that were exchanged between the Shankaracharya at Sringeri,
they want question,
and Haidar's letters to them, for acts of benevolence, everything is mentioned. So I'm coming back to the point I'm making, that if you just write the truth, which is quite complicated always, as Oscar Wilde says, if you just write it, it's enough. You don't have to be defensive. And I think that is the main contribution of a historian like Vikram Sampath. He is not a project historian. That means he does not come from an idea that we must write a kind of history that is going to set a kind of narrative. He wrote it out of personal ತೆವಲಿಂದ ಪ್ರಾರಂಭ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಂತ ಅವರೇ ಬರ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾರಲ್ಲ, ನನಗೇನೋ ತೆವಲಿತ್ತು. That is why it is more believable, his intent is more believable to us. The last thing I want to say is, see, when all these other historians are there, going back to my original idea of India and Bharat, they're quite willing to construct some people as, freedom fighters. For instance, Tipu Sultan, they're quite happy to construct him as a freedom fighter, but they're not willing to accept many such Indians, other Indians who have done this, who had a Bharatiya consciousness, who were fighting Bharat, ಅವ್ರನ್ನ ಆ ಥರ ಕನ್ಸಿಡರ್ ಮಾಡಲ್ಲ. ನಾವೇ ಕಷ್ಟಪಟ್ಟು ಕಟ್ಕೋಬೇಕು, ಮಕ್ಕಳಿಗೆ ಫ್ಯಾನ್ಸಿ ಡ್ರೆಸ್ ದಿನ ಕಿತ್ತೂರು ರಾಣಿ ಚೆನ್ನಮ್ಮಂತ ಡ್ರೆಸ್ ಹಾಕ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಯಾಕೆ ಕೊಡಬೇಕು, ನಿಮಗೆ ಯಾಕೆ ಕೊಡಬೇಕು ಕಪ್ಪ ಅಂತೇಳಿ, ಅದಕ್ಕಿಂತ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಬರ್ದಂಗೆ ಇರಲ್ಲ ನಮ್ಮದು. ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ವಿ ಶುಡ್ ಬಿ ಏಬಲ್ ಟು just construct a counter narrative which is based on historical evidence. And
On
fact.
that note itself, like we were saying about just plugging this, that the foundation that Dr. Sampath runs has scope. Like we earlier said, like ಬೇರೆ ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಸೀಟ್ ಸಿಗದಿದ್ದವರು BA history ತಗೊಳ್ತಾರೆ. That is how it's become. But history and telling the truth, if we want to change narrative, we have to incentivize telling the truth. And Dr. Sampath does make a platform available for something like that. But before we close, I think we don't have time for questions, and Dr. Sampath will be around. But before that, do we have time? No. Okay, but
I think
before
that
we
would be
close,
quite unfair to the audience. If they are okay, I'm okay. I think, yes, if they are okay, public demand. It's
Yeah,
a democracy. Two questions we should allow from the audience.
Actually, the book is so large, and Tipu is such a grand character that I think each one of them, if you start reading, each of you will have a question for every page. But on
There's one on the last row.
But
green.
before that, can we just since it's one more holier than the crown that he's given, a feather, about how he made these grants to the Sringeri Mutt, and that is what makes him secular.
See, that also is a huge, I mean, you need to see it in full context. In the third Anglo-Mysore war, the Marathas invade Mysore, and a part of the irregulars in the Maratha army, they are not on regular salary, the irregulars who are called the Pindaris. Now, most of them were actually Muslim. So, they go, since they don't have regular salary, during the ಲೂಟಿ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಅದು ಏನೇನು ಸಿಗುತ್ತೋ ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ದೇರ್ ಜೀವನೋಪಾಯಕ್ಕೆ ದಾರಿ. ಸೊ ದೀಸ್ ಪೀಪಲ್ ಗೋ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಅಟ್ಯಾಕ್ ದಿ ಶೃಂಗೇರಿ ಮಠ್. ದೇ ಈವನ್ ವ್ಯಾಂಡಲೈಸ್ ಶಾರದಾ ದೇವೀಸ್ ಮೂರ್ತಿ. ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಅವಾಗ ಶಂಕರಾಚಾರ್ಯ ಆಗಿದ್ದವರು ಹಿ ಗೋಸ್ ಆನ್ ಅ ಫಾಸ್ಟ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಟು ಡೆತ್ ಇನ್ ಪ್ರೊಟೆಸ್ಟ್. And that sends shock waves back to Pune, because if the Shankaracharya dies, then the great harm will come on the kingdom. And the Peshwa reproduced those letters from the Peshwa Daftar in Marathi that are there. He sent so many apology letters to the Swamiji saying this was not part of our intention, by chance ತಪ್ಪಾಗೋಯ್ತು, ನಾವು ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ಡಬಲ್ ಎಷ್ಟು ದುಡ್ಡು ತೊಗೊಂಡ್ವೋ ಅದನ್ನು ನಿಮಗೆ ವಾಪಸ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟು ನಾವೇ ಕಟ್ಟಿಸ್ಕೊಡ್ತೀವಿ ಮಠನ ತಿರ್ಗಾ ಅಂತ he writes, and he tells the Patvardhans who were part of that idu also that you should go and apologize to the Shankaracharya. ಆ ಟೈಮ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಟಿಪ್ಪು ಸುಲ್ತಾನ್ said don't take money from them, I'll give you money and I'll help you reconstruct. He and Hyder wrote lot of respectful letters to the Shankaracharya even before, but at this point maybe real politics also kicks in, that before my opponent does it, I'll do it and snatch a march over him. And he, in return, he says, you please do a Shatachandi japa and a Sahasra Chandi homa for my long life and my victory against the Marathas. And Shankaracharya actually does it also. So it's quite a strange this one. And many people may also ask, how is it that there are so many temples in old Mysore if Tipu was such a person? Melkotenal obru great scholar Srirama Ariyar Sriram Sharma ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಮಾತಾಡಿಸ್ತಾರೆ. He told me this, that Tipu was very very superstitious. Lot of these because his life was so uncertain. Jyotisha idu all these people would tell him something, ಈ ಪರಿಹಾರ ಮಾಡಿಸ್ಬಿಡು ಇದು ಸರಿ ಹೊಟ್ಟೋಗುತ್ತೆ, and he would believe all that. He would destroy the temple but incentivize some Jyotishi or give some puja. So some Jyotishi told him that ನಿನ್ನ ರಾಜ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿರೋ 3 ಥರದ ಕಲ್ಲುಗಳನ್ನ ನೀನು ಕೆಡವದೇ ಇದ್ದರೆ ನಿನ್ನ ರಾಜ್ಯ ಶಾಶ್ವತವಾಗಿ ಉಳಿಯುತ್ತೆ. ಈ 3 ಕಲ್ಲನ್ನ ನೀನು ಏನೂ ಮಾಡಬಾರ್ದು. ಯಾವ್ದು 3 ಕಲ್ಲು? ಎದ್ದ ಕಲ್ಲು, ಬಿದ್ದ ಕಲ್ಲು ಮತ್ತು ಗುಂಡು ಕಲ್ಲು. ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಆಲ್ಮೋಸ್ಟ್ ಆಲ್ ದಿ ಹಿಂದೂ ಡೈಟೀಸ್ ಆರ್ ಕವರ್ಡ್, ಐ ಥಿಂಕ್. ಎದ್ದ ಕಲ್ಲು ಚಲುವನಾರಾಯಣ ಸ್ವಾಮಿ ಮೇಲ್ಕೋಟೆ, ಬಿದ್ದ ಕಲ್ಲು ರಂಗನಾಥ ಸ್ವಾಮಿ ಇನ್ ಶ್ರೀರಂಗಪಟ್ಟಣ, ಗುಂಡು ಕಲ್ಲು ನಂಜನಗೂಡು ಶ್ರೀಕಂಠೇಶ್ವರ. ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಭಯ ಏನು ಹುಟ್ಟಿಸಿದ್ರು ಅವ್ರ ಮನಸ್ಸಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಅಂದರೆ ರಂಗನಾಥ ಟೆಂಪಲ್ನ ನೀವು ಹೊಡಿಬಾರ್ದು ಅಂತ. ಸರಿ. ಸೊ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ನೀವು ಸೌತ್ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕನಲ್ಲಿ ನೋಡಿದ್ರೆ ಎಷ್ಟೊಂದು ದೇವಸ್ಥಾನಗಳಿಗೆ ಬಿಳಿಗಿರಿ ರಂಗ, ಹೇಮರಂಗ, ಕಲ್ಯಾಣ ರಂಗ, ಮಾಗಡಿ ರಂಗ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರು ಹೊರಗಡೆ ಇರೋದು. ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಆ್ಯಕ್ಚುಲ್ ಮೇನ್ ಡೇಟ್ ಇರೋದು ವೆಂಕಟರಮಣ, ಬಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಮುಂದೆ ಒಂದು ರಂಗನಾಥ ಸ್ವಾಮಿನ ಇಡಿಸ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಹೇಳಬಾರ್ದು, ಬಟ್ ಲೈಕ್ ಅ ಸ್ಕೇರ್ ಕ್ರೋ ದಟ್ ಅದನ್ನು ನೋಡ್ತಾರೆ ರಂಗನಾಥ ಅಂತ ತಕ್ಷಣ ಓಡೋಟೋಗೋದು. ಸೊ ಈವನ್ ಇನ್ ಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ಲಕ್ಷ್ಮೀ ಅಮ್ಮಣ್ಣಿ's pen name was also Sriranga. She would never sign as her own name, Sriranga. ರಂಗ ಅಂತ ನೋಡಿದ್ರೆ ಭಯ ಆಗೋಗೋದು ಮನುಷ್ಯನಿಗೆ, and he would run away. So ಈ ಥರ I mean very very psychotic this thing also.
On that note, I think we can open it for questions. I mean,
ಲಂಚ್ ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಇದೇ ಮಾತಾಡಬೇಕಾಗುತ್ತೆ ಅವಾಗ ಹಾಕೊಂಡು, ಬಟ್ ಐ ಆಮ್ ಓಕೆ ವಿತ್ ಇಟ್ ಇಫ್ ಯು ಆರ್ ಓಕೆ.
Okay, thank you, sir. That was a really insightful discussion, and we meet again. So, sir, actually, I have two questions. I'll make it very quick. Okay, one is, according to me, like based on my observation, the left historians have kind of categorized three kinds of rulers. One is they either glorify them to a large extent, like Aurangzeb, etc. Number two, there are rulers who they try to suppress, or they would give very little reference. For example, Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj and Lachit Barphukan in Assam and all. And the third category is those rulers who are villainized to a very large extent. One is Veera Raja, the one who fought with Tipu Sultan and Hyder Ali both. And the second one is perhaps Chhatrapati Sambhaji Maharaj for the Marathas. Now, let's leave aside the first category, only those two categories. Why do they hate only such characters, like Meteoric?
Yeah, so I think that's obvious because, in one of my other books called Brave Hearts of Bharat, that is what I've tried to, I think Ganesh ji has also written a beautiful book on Kshatra spirit, which has been translated into English as well. The Kshatra, did we all just, cover down before invasions? Were there no victories that we had as a civilization? If we are the only pre-Bronze Age era civilization, there must have been some wars that our poor ancestors also won. But we learn only a long laundry list of battles that we lost as Bharatiyas, from Arab invasion to Plasi, Buxar, Panipat, Anglo-Mysore, Anglo-Maratha, Anglo-Sikh wars. It's a laundry list of battles that we lost. So, I mean, it was a very colonial version of Indian history, which again, very dutifully, post-independent, what I would call Nehruvian consensus, tried to rebuild on, also to create what they thought was social cohesion among communities, which is a very, very specious argument. Yes. Yeah.
Sir, so I had recently heard your talk, which was later in a print article. In that you specifically mentioned that just like how the Western leftist historians follow the critical race theory, similarly the Indian left follows a similar kind of theory or the same one, but they apply it to a different context. Could you just please elaborate on that?
That will take a long time. I think Rajiv Malhotra ji has, written so much on that. The caste system, which they bring out as a, parallel to the critical race theory, upper caste, whites and blacks become Brahmin and Shudra and everything. I mean, Buddhism and Jainism should be, we had that discussion earlier on Buddhism. They are posited as Protestant religions against Vedic Brahminism, quite like Catholic and Protestant. So a lot of Western models retrofitted to India without any, connection. This is certainly one of them. But Snakes in the Ganga, I think that is a book one should read to understand exactly how the Western subterfuge happens. And Rajiv ji's contribution is immense in awakening a lot of people.
I just want to make one small point. It may seem kind of difficult to believe that, that Tipu would be scared of, Hindu uprising. But I want to tell you something that may be shocking to you. For it took 22 years for Aurangzeb to impose the jizya. Real politics is very difficult. Even Aurangzeb could not immediately impose the jizya. And I think there are very few people left who will continue to claim that Aurangzeb was secular, So, it is not easy. There is real politics, as I said, and I think that kind of contextual, complex history should be well written and presented like he does for us to find out who we were and who we are now.
For which we probably should have an extension of the Lit Fest where we have symposiums.
ಈಗ ನೀವು ಅಕ್ರಾಸ್ ಸ್ಪೆಕ್ಟ್ರಮಲ್ಲಿ ನೀವು ಇಂಟರ್ವ್ಯೂ ಕೊಡ್ತಾ ಹೋಗ್ತೀರಾ, ಪ್ರತಿ ಪುಸ್ತಕ ಬಂದಾಗಲೂ ಕೊಡ್ತೀರಾ. ಬರ್ಖಾದತ್, ವೀರ್ ಸಂಘ್ವಿ, ನಾನು 2-3 ವರ್ಷದಿಂದ ನಿಮ್ಮನ್ನು ಫಾಲೋ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ ಯೂಟ್ಯೂಬಲ್ಲಿ. ಅವರು ನಿಮ್ಮನ್ನು ಸಿಕ್ಸೋಕ್ಕೆ ನೋಡ್ತಾ ಇರ್ತಾರೆ. ನೀವು ಅದನ್ನು ಯು ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಟು ಬಿ ವೆರಿ ಕಾಮ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಕಂಪೋಸ್ಡ್. ಹೌ ಡು ಯು ಮ್ಯಾನೇಜ್ ದ್ಯಾಟ್? ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಸತ್ಯಕ್ಕೆ ಬೆನ್ನು ಮಾಡಿ ನಿಂತವ್ರ ಜೊತೆ ನೀವು ಸತ್ಯವನ್ನು ಹೇಳುವವರು ಯಾವ ಥರ ಸಂವಾದ ಕೇಳಿತೀರಾ? ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಐ ಆಮ್ ವೆರಿ ಇಂಟ್ರೆಸ್ಟೆಡ್ ಇನ್ ಸಂವಾದ. RSSನ ಒಂದು ಮೋಟೋ ಏನು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದರೆ ಸಂವಾದ ಬೇಕು ಅಂಥೇಳಿ, ಅದು ದತ್ತೋಪಂತ ಠೇಂಗಡಿ, ಗುರುಜಿ ಗೋಳ್ವಾಲ್ಕರ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿಂದ ಬಂದಿದೆ. ಸೊ ಈ ಕನ್ಸೆನ್ಸಸ್ನ ಹಿನ್ನೆಲೆಯಿಂದ ನಾನು ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. ಸೊ ಈ ಸಂವಾದ ಯಾವ ಥರ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ, ನೀವು ಅದನ್ನು ಯಾವ ಥರ ನೋಡ್ತೀರಾ ಅಂಥೇಳಿ?
Very good question, not at all trivial. I think it is important. Now, I don't indulge with the ultra, far left, whether it is Wire and Scroll and News Laundry and all these people. But a lot of them are in the middle, maybe somewhere, and some are opportunists. Yedgode Deepa, ee kade, aa kade, eradu kade vaaloru. And for them, there's no point preaching to the converted. Lot of their followers, the people you mentioned, they may be confused. They don't know whether to turn this side or that side. I think as that adage goes, Jnanam Paramam Balam anta. I think if information is there with you, knowledge is there with you, that gives a strength of its own. And you don't have to shout and scream and get aggressive and talk about it. You can keep a very calm demeanor and Hindi nalla ididella meethi churi anta. So you can put it in a velvet cloth and then put it quite deep and clog it further inside. And a lot of them, when you show facts, as Prakash or Heldange, when there is truth, there is no ambiguity at all. Here, if you're quoting the person himself, where is there opportunity for interpretation, ambiguity, and so on? So that samvada has to happen, but unfortunately, I think I see a lot of non-left people indulging in that. We would love to talk to other people, but if you see the other side, they never indulge in conversation. It is always a one-way traffic, my way or the highway, including very eminent historians or the new upcoming ones also. If you just look at the kind of talks or dialogues that they have, you'll have a very gushing, interviewer who will talk to them. I have faced some of the most hostile, interviewers, which is quite a difficult thing to do, to keep your cool, including that with Rajdeep Sardesai and Shashi Tharoor on India Today. It was quite a difficult task, and you're all the time made to feel very, very inferior.
Difficult, he was very good in that.
I think, some amount of spiritual sadhana, which I continue to do, I think that also helps to keep sane mind. Thank you. Thank you all.
Can we close the session?
Yes, we can.
Thank you everyone for being a wonderful audience.
Sorry for eating much into your lunchtime. But I hope we have given enough food for thought also.
On behalf of everyone present here, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to our esteemed speakers, Dr. Vikram, Sampath, and Mr. Prakash Belawadi, for their valuable insights to our session, and to our moderator, Ms. Harsha Shankar Bhat, for guiding the session so efficiently.
ಇದೀಗ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮದ ಪರವಾಗಿ ನೆನಪಿನ ಕಾಣಿಕೆಯನ್ನು ನೀಡಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಧನುಷ್, ನಿಟ್ಟೆ ಯೂನಿವರ್ಸಿಟಿಯಿಂದ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಧನುಷ್ ಅವರನ್ನು ವೇದಿಕೆಗೆ ಆಹ್ವಾನ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೇನೆ. ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ವಿಕ್ರಮ್ ಸಂಪತ್ ಹಾಗೂ ಹರ್ಷ ಶಂಕರ್ ಭಟ್ ಇವರಿಗೆ ನೆನಪಿನ ಕಾಣಿಕೆಯನ್ನು ನೀಡಬೇಕು ಅಂತೇಳಿ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಧನುಷ್ ಫ್ರಮ್ ನಿಟ್ಟೆ ಯೂನಿವರ್ಸಿಟಿ.